Today we're making a Danish dessert that's called Fragilité, or Fragile, and it's a Danish dessert that's made of meringue, mocha cream and hazelnuts. And to start off, we're going to preheat our oven to 200 degrees, and after that we're going to measure out 70 grams of hazelnuts. We're just going to place them in an oven heat safe pan and just pop them in the oven for 10 minutes. And that's going to roast them a bit, and also it's going to make it much easier to remove the shell. So we're going to just roast them in the oven for 10 minutes, and once they're nice and hot, we're going to place them in a towel, fold that up, and then just rub them together, because that's going to remove most of the shells. It's not going to work for all of them, but most of them will be much easier to peel, and for some it's not going to remove the shells, but that's just going to be a few ones, so that's not going to be a problem at all. So just rub them together, but remember that these are still very hot, so be careful not to burn yourself. And once you've rubbed them and removed most of the shells, you can just pinch them a bit and see if the shells comes off. If it does, that's great. If it doesn't, that's not a problem. So a few of the shells left is not going to make any difference. And that means that we're just going to take our roasted hazelnuts and put them in a blender. And once that's done, we're gonna separate 2 eggs. I'm using 3 here because mine were really small. So I had like 50 grams eggs, but if you have 70 grams eggs, which I think is fairly standard, then you can use 2. But we're gonna separate the egg whites from the egg yolks since we're making meringue. And it's really important here that you don't get any egg yolks within your egg whites, because then none of this is gonna work. Then we're just gonna blend our hazelnuts a bit. We don't need a super fine powder here, we're just gonna put them through the machine for 1 or 2 minutes. And then we're gonna start making our meringue. And that means we're gonna use our 3 egg whites, or 2 egg whites, and 90 grams of sugar. And meringues still are one of my favorite things. I've always made them like this, I don't know why. That when I whisk them up, I use half the sugar, whisk them to the consistency I want, and then add the rest of the sugar, and still whisking on a low speed. I don't know why. It probably doesn't make a difference, but it's the way I've always done it since I was a kid. So I'm still going strong with that method, and it works fine. So once you're happy with your thickness of your meringues, just add the remaining sugar and beat that in at a low speed. And I think adding the final sugar just thickens this up a bit more. But anyway, you can add all of the sugar at once if you'd like. And once we're done with that, we're gonna add our mixed hazelnuts to that, and we're simply just gonna fold those in. So get a spatula or spoon or anything and just fold those 2 together. Now we're gonna lower our oven to 150 degrees, and we're gonna place our meringue on a baking sheet. And if you want to be super accurate during this, you can use a baking sheet and a pencil and just trace out where you want your meringues to end up. And if you're doing it with a pencil and a ruler, aim for something like 25 times 30 centimeters. I'm just winging it, so I just try to use the same amount for both trays, and it usually works out fine. And then all we need to do is just flatten that out a bit. As I said, aim for something like 25 times 30, roughly that area. And then we're gonna bake them at 150 degrees for roughly 25 minutes. We want them to become golden brown, but not like super golden or burnt, so still some chewiness left. This is where I like to remove them, and all we need to do with them then is just slide them off, let them cool on the counter, and then later we're gonna cut those up into squares. And if you're worried about your meringue sticking to your baking paper, you can always use some butter or cooking spray or anything just to help it release, but for me it hasn't been a problem. If your meringues are done, they will usually release of themselves, by themselves. And since we're gonna make our mocha cream, we're gonna need some strong coffee. So if you have a Bialetti or an espresso maker or anything, just use that. We're gonna use 2 tablespoons of coffee. Since this is going in our mocha cream where we're gonna use butter, it's important to let the coffee cool, otherwise the butter will totally melt and we're not gonna get our creamy consistency. For our mocha cream, we're gonna use 50 grams of chocolate. Pour your coffee up, let it cool down. And we're also gonna use 50 grams of butter. We're gonna whisk those together. And then we're gonna melt our chocolate, and we're gonna do that Bon Marie style. So just boil up some water, place a bowl on top, and stir while your chocolate melts. And then we're also gonna add 50 grams of powdered sugar. So 50 grams chocolate, 50 grams butter, 50 grams of powdered sugar. Fairly easy to remember. Once your water is boiling, all you need to do is place your chocolate on and it's gonna melt while you stir. And our butter is straight from the fridge. Since our chocolate is hot, it's gonna help melt our butter to the level that we need for them to mix together. So there's no need for any room temp butter or anything, just mix those two together as they are. And it's gonna look a bit weird when we start whisking this at the beginning because the butter is still very cold, but once our butter has eased up a bit, they're gonna come together quite fine. And I'm using a KitchenAid here with a whisk attachment. You can whisk this by hand as well, it works as well. And as I said, it takes a while for the butter to actually heat up, but once it has, they will mix together very well. And that means that it's time for us to add our sugar. And let that mix in with the butter and the chocolate. And once that's done, we're gonna add our egg yolks. And we're gonna add them one at a time, let that mix in, and then we're gonna add another one. And I like to do 4 portions of this. You can make them smaller if you want. That's totally up to you. Final egg yolk. Just checking that our coffee is not hot because that will mess with our butter. So if your coffee has cooled down, that's super. Just add 2 tablespoons. And then we just add 2 tablespoons of our coffee. And it's gonna look like everything is gonna split, but if you add 1 tablespoon at a time, it's gonna be fine. but add your coffee slowly. And once that's mixed together, then we have our mocha cream. And that means that we are at our cake assembly point. So, what we need to do, if you have a super exact measured with a ruler meringue here, then all you need to do is cut it. Here I think it's a good idea just to nick it. I mean, so that you just cut a very, very thin part, because you want to help the meringue to break where you want it to break. And if you try to cut this all at once, it's definitely gonna fall apart and you're not gonna get any nice squares. That's fine, that's not gonna show as much as well, and some of them probably will break. But if you just nick it a bit first, you're gonna help the meringue to realize where you want it to break. Then you can actually just cut it straight through once you have shown it where it should break. And some of them might break anyway, especially if you're impatient and don't make your light incisions in them. But that's fine. We're just gonna stack them anyway, so that won't show. And a few of them we want them to break because we want to crumble those up on the top. So if a few of them breaks, that's fine and no problem at all. So that means that we're just gonna add a layer of mocha cream in the middle and just keep stacking those as high as you want them. If you're making 4 portions like I am, that means that we're gonna be using 4 layers. And then we're gonna take one of those broken pieces and just crumble that on top. If you want it to look fancy, just use one of the ones that didn't break on the top, and it's gonna look great, and no one will know that you broke them. So in the end, we're gonna end up with 4 stacks and a bit of buttercream or mocha cream left. And I like to add some of that mocha cream on top, and then take the ones that broke and just crumble them up and place them on top. And after that, we're gonna take some hazelnuts, roughly 10 grams, chop those up and add them on top as well. And after that, you need to decide if you want them crispy or chewy. If you want them chewy, just place them in the fridge for 2 hours or something. That's gonna make them a bit chewier. And once you're ready to eat them, just take 10 grams of hazelnuts, chop that up and add them on top. And then we have our final step here, and that is that we are going to add some powdered sugar on the top of that. It's not going to be much in grams, it's basically nothing. So I haven't added that to the calculations, but if you want, there's a spreadsheet. You just add an extra gram if you want to be very, very exact. And as usual, there's a spreadsheet with all the macros and anything. If you want to add an extra gram of powdered sugar to that, feel free. So all we need to do is just sprinkle those on top. All we need to do then, just before serving, add some powdered sugar. I hope you like these. I think that they are delicious, and I hope you try them, and I hope you enjoy.